Warning, the following video contains blood, mentions of violence, police phone calls, interrogation footage, disturbing audio, and mention of rape. If any of these topics triggers, disturbs, or make you feel any forms of discomfort, please click off. All sources will be linked in the description, as links and/or as a playlist. Thank you.
Myths can be boiled down to folk tales, stories, or folklore. Examples of these mythical creatures include werewolves, vampires, and the infamous Bigfoot and Loch Ness Monster. These tales were often told in books, movies, and the obvious word of mouth. Eventually these myths became older and older, and with the rise of the 1970s to the 1980s, a new form of folktale was starting to emerge from the ground, or rather, the lake. During the 70s and 80s, the idea of the slasher was beginning to grow. These legends would eventually replace the once known legends with characters like Jason Voorhees, Michael Myers, Freddy Krueger, and Pennywise. With the horror scene beginning to grow in audience, as well as a newly found cultural effect onto the world, some individuals will find inspiration to write or draw their own characters into existence. But they would soon find it difficult to share them. Around this time, no one could have just asked a company to help them make a show, or a movie, or even a book series about their character. They would need lawyers, extreme luck, and lots of money, something that these teenagers didn't have. But that would seem to change with the rise of the 1990s. The internet became more accessible to the public on April 30th, 1993. The idea of sharing your ideas to the world practically for free was a game changer for many teens around the world. People would make websites to upload their works, their ideas, their films. A popular example of these types of websites were Ian Heacock's and Anthony Padilla's Smosh.com, as well as James Rolfe's Cinemassacre.com. Eventually, websites would be created to host multiple people's ideas at once, with the rise of 4chan, 2chan, Reddit, Facebook, and of course the Something Awful forums. These websites would eventually form a wiki together, one only faced on horror. Sure, 2chan and 4chan, Reddit, and Something Awful had a creepy section with characters like Jeff the Killer and Suicide Squidward being born on 4chan, but it was usually overshadowed by shitposters, people that just post memes or troll. The creepypasta.com website was created in 2008, and 1 year later, on June 10th, 2009, a cryptid would soon bring the internet and creepypastas in general to the mainstream. This cryptid not only brought the idea of the FPM, or the first-person media, but also popularized the idea of the lost footage style, and ARGs, and an overarching fandom really. So, the year is 2009, and the Something Awful forums admins were holding their yearly Photoshop contest with the theme of paranormal images, challenging the users to create a scary photo, which was when a user named Victor Surge, his real name being Eric Cuddenson, would create the first instance of Slender Man. The first photo was stating, in what seems to be a roadside, "We didn't want to go. We didn't want to kill them. But his persistent silence and outstretched arms, horrified
And the second photo, in what seems to be a playground, also states,
one of the 2 recovered photographs from the Sterling City Library blaze, notable for being taken the day 14 children vanished, and for what is referred to as the Slender Man. Deformity cited as filmed attacks by officials. A fire at the library occurred 1 week later. The actual photograph confiscated as evidence. 1886. Photographer Mary Thomas. Missing since June 13th, 1986.
At first, these photos didn't get too much recognition, with a few users saying how it was genuinely creepy, and complimenting his style of editing, with one user being the name of Legend Decker, stating,
"Oh, gently caress you. When I finally saw the guy in the background, I lost it. This is going to give me nightmares."
As well as another user like Beardeer role-playing as an ancient researcher, stating how Slender Man has been in many photos before these were actually posted. This gave Eric enough courage to make more photos, and to start writing actual lore for the Slender Man. And only after a few days, the Slender Man was practically something awful famous. Saying these photos blew up was an understatement. Like I said, within a day or two, Slender Man was already taking over to Something Awful forums. He followed up the Slender Mania with 2 more images, one with schizo scribbles, and the other with Slender Man outside the unfortunate victim's house. With even more content that Eric was making, the fanbase seemed to grow and praise the cryptid. Something Awful users understood what they had in their hands, and if they played their cards correctly, they would have created the next horror icon, one that started on the internet. Users began to ask, what's the consistence of using him? Eric didn't respond to most of these, rather focusing on drawing and editing more photos of Slender Man in multiple perspectives. From children's drawings to lurking in the woods, his skeletal body blending into the large dark trees. Eric added small bits and pieces of lore to Slender Man, enough to keep people interested, yet not enough to set a congruent story. This caused the Slender Man to be taking up most of the original thread, instead of original characters and original works. The contest's thread was almost filled to the brim with Slender praise and fan works, like stories, art, and theory talk, to fan art, fake police sightings and files, and even fake newspaper scraps. Little tidbits from the Slender community inspired other fans to create more, and with the rise of Slender Man, the more the fanbase grew, which also indirectly caused more people to argue, specifically on how Slender Man should be portrayed. These users were mainly arguing about if they should keep the Slender Man as a Something Awful / creepypasta thing, or to spread the awareness of Slender Man to things like Reddit, 4chan, and the relatively new platform at the time, YouTube. Also during this time, some of Slender Man's characteristics were being questioned, mainly about his tentacles, movements, and suit. This talk of Slender Man would continue, and eventually with the introduction of a user named Cigars, their real name being Troy Wagner, and his friend Kicks You in Half, with their real name being Joseph DeLog. Hey there, post-editing Xpadition. I just wanted to say that before I talk about Marble Hornets, you're gonna need to remember another guy, okay? Tim Wright, I think his name is. I did not do any research on him. I completely left him out of the fucking script. Don't know why. He played a major role in not only the first 2 seasons, but also in the 3rd season. And not only that, but he also was the writer for Slender The Revival. Whenever I talk about Troy and Joseph, I'm also going to be including Tim, even though all the editing is already done. Just remember, Tim is included with Troy and Joseph. Yeah, back to the video. These two would act as the 2 characters named Jay, played by Troy, and Alex, played by Joseph. In the almost endless thread of Slender Man, Jay would talk about his friend Alex, and how he has been acting weird after filming his college project, Marble Hornets. Troy would try to get people interested with the story and concept of Marble Hornets, but nobody really seemed to care or interact with these posts, until he posted a link to a YouTube video, which contained footage that finally caught most of the Something Awful users' attention. Only after 10 days of Slender Man's appearance, Something Awful users were surprised and applauded Troy and Joseph on their craftsmanship and careful focus on detail. even with the little information they were given about Slender. With the success with both Something Awful users and the new viewers, who didn't even know who or what Slender Man is, was enjoying the pilot, giving Troy and Joseph enough confidence to morph the videos into a multi-year YouTube horror ARG series, with each episode gathering millions and millions of views, basically throwing Slender to a new audience. Now, talking about Marble Hornets as a whole would take me a few months to make, as well as an almost 10-hour video of the video series itself, the ARG, and I'll even have to read the comic series to cover all bases of Marble Hornets. So, I'll just give you a basic rundown. The series starts with Jay uploading Alex's project titled Marble Hornets, after Alex abandoned it due to the creature stalking and making him sick. After Jay uploads Marble Hornets, he starts to film his own experiences, after he started getting stalked by the same creature. The rest of the series follows Jay and Alex discovering and trying to solve the mystery of the Slender Man, who was named the Operator in this series. The characters' actions and motives were all a Marble Hornets original, but the series would take some inspiration from the original photos' thematic cues, adding new ideas to Slender Man as well as expanding the few original concepts of him. For example, characters disappearing and reappearing due to being under the influence of the Operator, as shown in the first two photos, as well as the Operator burning buildings, and even pulling people towards them. Now, what the Marble Hornets came up with was the ideas of Slender Sickness and Proxies. Slender Sickness was basically coughing, nausea, blood dripping from the nose, and extreme paranoia. And Proxies were basically Slender Man's henchmen. The Proxies' goal was to expose Slender Man to more people, so Slender Man could get more Proxies, and those that chose not to associate with Slender would be killed by him. The series would follow through different channels, cryptid posts, DVD sets, and eventually a comic series, including the release of an eventual movie, but we'll discuss that later. So, back to Marble Hornets. Once more and more episodes came out, the more the Something Awful users began to theorize. The same week Marble Hornets was released. With the amount of views that Troy and Joseph's series got, at the time it became the biggest YouTube series of all time, letting the casual Joe and the mainstream audience be introduced to not only Slender Man, but also the internet, as well as the idea of analog horror, basically becoming one of the first video horror interactive ARGs on YouTube. Marble Hornets, in my opinion, was a very good series. The acting got better in each episode, and as well as the effects, but what improved the most was the storytelling. Marble Hornets' thematic route were so in sync with the original photos that Eric made, it was bizarre, and what made the series better is the representation of Slender Man, or the Operator. Slender Man, believe it or not, wasn't a character, but rather a narrative, a giant question, with even more questions popping up throughout the runtime of the series, some being answered, while others had a more bleak and vague answer, basically giving the viewers scraps to figure out themselves who or what is Slender. Troy and Joseph shown how valuable Slender Man is in the context of film. Like other horror movie stars, Slender Man was used as a device and as a proxy for the horror genre itself. Both of them unknowingly caused a tsunami of inspiration, which also caused a wave of more people being into Slender Man content. And when there's more people, there's bound to be more creators. With young filmmakers peeking through the Marble Hornets hole, they saw how flexible Slender Man was to a small budget, as well as how easy they were to write. So once people saw the Something Awful thread with the inclusion of Marble Hornets, Slender Man became a ragdoll of sorts, or a blank canvas for writers. And it was their choice to paint the new narratives and stories with him. From authors to everyday people, they were starting to get into the action, making new characters that were spawning as the characters to Slender Man, which would eventually get popular on their own. An example for one of these characters would be Tiki Toby, who started out as a Slender Man proxy. For a while, a niche part of the internet had something to latch onto, a myth that could be controlled with no limitations other than the imagination of their creators. These new series, animations, stories, and short films brought every idea of Slender to the table. If it was smart, dumb, scary, or silly, more and more angles and perspectives and stories were being found and told, incorporated by the personalities of the masses. These creatives learned, ripped off, collaborated, and eventually grew up with each other, mainly because the people making Slender Man content were teenagers or even young adults in college. With the artistic interaction growing more hyper and intense every day, the only way it could be described is its official name, the Slenderverse. The Slenderverse is a way the Slender Man fandom describes these short films, series, comics, and creepypastas as one big multiverse being connected in some way. How is Marble Hornets connected to Blink? Is Minecraft considered to be a part of the Slenderverse? Is Slender Man actually slender? But these questions always lead back to a certain one. Who or what is Slender Man? What does he represent? And when you think about it, you can understand why. Is he the embodiment of childhood fear? Or a religious icon? A reminder of bad choices? Maybe he's just a monster from the woods. Does his presence mean anything at all? With the Slender Man's fanbase beginning to grow, the more creative people got, when it eventually reached an inevitable milestone. At this point, Slender Man was practically the king of the internet. The creepypasta cryptid was popular enough with the films and art, but its final push into the mainstream and made the Something Awful users baby rage was the games made of him. The first game of his was titled Slender Invasion, made in Java, all the way back in 2009 by an unknown indie developer. Sadly, the information about this game developer is scarce, with only a couple screenshots and gameplay, but it looks like an ordinary shooter where you just kill Slender Man. Another is titled Slender Man the Game, which was created by Green Meteor Team back in 2011. It was around October when 64 Digits, a website made for holding indie games, held a contest to create a horror and scary game. Zach, the creator of Green Meteor Team, came up with a game where Slender Man controlled by AI would hunt you down, which was filled with Doctor Who and Blink references according to the creator. At the time, this was very impressive, since this is one of the first games that used AI. Sadly, the game isn't downloadable now, but you can still play on most Russian sites. I'll also link their new game, The Snare Below, down in the description. More games will be released, but I'll focus on the two important ones as they're more well known and caused an impact in Slender Man's popularity. These games were Slender The 8 Pages and Slender The Revival. I'll first talk about 8 Pages. Slender The 8 Pages, or Slender as it was originally called, was a major game basically becoming the beacon of Slender Man and creepypasta culture. In 2012, an indie company called Parsac Productions would introduce Slender Man to a wild and a somewhat toxic community at the time, and arguably the least accepting community on the internet, being gamers. The 8 Pages took aspects from the original photos as well as some features from the Marble Hornets that structured Slender Man as both a threat and a mystery, which was surprisingly converted well into the gameplay and the first-person aspects with little to no bumps. But not everything was Slender spectacular. One of the major problems for the game was the gameplay itself. The game was hard, like very difficult. The game is set in a very large forest with heavy fog setting in. You can't run in the game, or at least for a long time, and you have a limited amount of battery power on your flashlight. You could also permanently run out of stamina, with no way to recharge it. The pages were also very hard to find. With each time you collect a page, the fog will get heavier and the faster Slender Man gets. To a lot of people, mainly kids like me, this was our first introduction to the Slender Man, with more fan games being made like Slender Elementary and Slender Mansion, which was eventually renamed to Slender Shadow, for reasons I'll describe later into the video. The Let's Play scene on YouTube was absolutely obsessed with the success of Slender Man. With more fan games coming out, the more Let's Players would play them, converting the content to millions of kids. With people seeing the millions of views, more content like webcomic dubs, animations, and skits would be made about the Slender Man, almost becoming the perfect cycle of content, views, and create. In my opinion, this formula is more common with the mascot horror genre. So, in a way, Slender Man kind of reintroduced that whole genre. Though, the Something Awful users weren't so happy about the sudden popularity, they hated the idea of their character being overtaken by kids and cash grabbers, being included in things like Minecraft and Roblox games. But no matter how much Something Awful users complained, they delved too deep. Slender Man belonged to the mainstream now, or at least the mainstream internet, and for a while the Something Awful forums would be forgotten. But if it made them feel better, at least the kids and preteens that took over the Slenderverse fandom were doing the same thing that they were doing. But in a different way. Instead of collaborating to build the lore of Slender Man or the fear factor of him, they collaborated to make webcomics like Slender Manor, Wattpad and fanfics of Slender Man, and shipping themselves or other creepypasta characters of Slender Man, like Jeff the Killer, Laughing Jack, and others. Slender Manor was one of the more popular comics, which was when the idea of Slender Mansion, the game we talked about earlier, was repurposed into a mansion owned by Slender Man, where all these creepypasta characters lived. While the new fans spurred up, original fans were starting to leave. This was the cause of either not liking how the fandom was beginning to change, or simply leaving because they're starting to grow up. The fanbase was split, those that loved the silly Slendy, and those that missed the terrifying and creepy Slender Man. 2012 was the start of the new generation of Slender Man fans, with 2013 being the mascot phase of Slender Man, as well as his next game releasing on PlayStation 4 and Xbox One being Slender The Revival, which was released on March 26, 2013. Slender The Revival was a massive hit, with new gameplay and enhanced graphics, as well as a new setting and including a new story. The game also brought back the return of Eric Cunninson, Troy Wagner, and Joseph DeLog to write the story of the game. Though there were repetitive segments of the game was still mainly loved by both new and old fans. But two events would happen later on that would have the Slenderverse turned upside down. Let's get one thing right. Slender Man has always been an internet character, meaning that he was a free use character. People could have used him for whatever product they wanted, for any amount of profit they wanted. However, a faceless drama was started. Back in 2010, the term and character Slender Man was copyrighted by Eric, and to use the Slender Man character for profit, you would have to ask for permission. However, this was an exception on November 12, 2013 for a game called Faceless. The game was originally created to be a Slender Man fan game, uploaded onto Steam. Valve, the owners of Steam,
said to the developer, named Justin Ross,
that they'll need permission to host and sell the game onto Steam. Justin said he requested and acquired permission from the creator Eric Cunninson. Valve replied that they'll need more than just Cunnison's permission. As Valve informed Justin, a third party bought rights to certain aspects of Slender Man, which included the prominence of film and video games. This third party company was no other than Sony Entertainment. This caused the development team behind Faceless to enter multiple crunch hours, and as well as a year-long development hell. Due to the Slender Man licensing, it's currently in early access on Steam. If you want to play the original, it started as a Half-Life 2 mod, and you can still download it on ModDB. The Slender Man community was outraged, not only for what this did to Faceless, but what this is going to do to newer fan games and fan films. Hell, the whole way Slender Man was represented and the way he grew popular was from the fans contributing to him, like Marble Hornets in the 8 pages. Sadly, this was only the beginning of Slender Man's fall, with the introduction of 3 fans that would turn this creepypasta into a real-life nightmare.
Story out of Wisconsin.
The brutal stabbing of a 12-year-old girl.
The girl told police she was with 2 other girls she knew.
The victim's friends left her to die.
Prosecutors asked for $1 million cash bail for 2 middle schoolers they say plotted for months before they attacked their best friend.
Suspects lured the victim into the woods. All 3 of the girls are 12 years old.
And as full details of this case start to circulate, people that I talked to literally have no words.
On May 31st, 2014, in Ohio, Wisconsin, more specifically in the Waukesha County, 2 12-year-old girls, Anisha Wire and Morgan Geiger, lured their friend Peyton Luther, nicknamed Bella, into David's Park and stabbed her 19 times in an attempt to appease the Slender Man, with the case now being known as the Slender Man stabbing. This begins during 2010, 1 year after the Slender Man was created. Peyton and Morgan haven't met yet, but were about to become friends. Peyton first walked up to Morgan after seeing her sitting alone. As Peyton approached Morgan, they began to talk about their similar interests, eventually becoming friends. After school, they would hang out and have many sleepovers. Morgan gave her the nickname Bella after having 2 Peytons in her classroom, eventually saying she was my only friend for a long time in her taped interview. During Morgan's childhood, she would have experienced multiple hallucinations, and she would often talk to herself. One of these hallucinations was a figure made of smoke that she called It, with Morgan's parents stating that at many times they felt Morgan was lacking empathy, like not crying at sad movies.
One thing about Morgan that always struck us as a little odd was that she didn't react the way that you would expect her to react. Like if something bad happened to the main character, she wouldn't have empathy for them.
Or messing/destroying her Barbie dolls. However, that's not the end of Morgan's odd behavior. In school, she would perform weird rituals, which made her even more disconnected with her peers. One day, a couple of teenagers even found Morgan playing with her own blood in the school bathroom, which I can assume was her monthly blood. Hey there, post-editing Xpadition here, and no, it wasn't her period blood, it was just blood from a scab. My fault, gang. Sorry to make it weird. Back to the video. And at one point, Morgan was being suspended from school for sneaking a hammer onto campus. Morgan's sense of reality was also skewed, as official Waukesha County District Attorney named Kevin Osborne would discuss his encounters with Morgan, stating that she had delusions of talking with Harry Potter characters, believing in holiday myths like the Easter Bunny or Santa, and he very clearly states that it wasn't a whimsical belief, but an adamant and serious belief.
Morgan reported having delusions, conversations with Harry Potter characters, with Voldemort, with Professor Snape. Just kind of a whimsical belief. She was adamant that these characters existed in her reality.
She would often imagine herself in a world inside of her own head to escape the reality and the bullying that she had at school. Now, continuing with the weird behavior, Morgan's deviantness would find her way into other people's homes. For example, in Peyton's home. During one of their sleepovers, Morgan would be caught burning paper into their basement, causing Peyton's parents to restrict her from talking to Morgan. During their advancement to middle school, Morgan and Peyton's friendship would eventually slow down and partially drift. While riding the bus, Morgan would eventually become friends and meet a girl during that bus ride. On October of 2013, the girl she would meet would be named Anissa Wire. Anissa was a teacher's pet. She was shy and often kept to herself and told on students that were misbehaving. As Anissa's teacher's pet reputation grew, this ultimately caused her to become a social outcast, as no one wanted to befriend a quote-unquote snitch. On the bus ride of October 2013, the two would instantly click with the same weird and bizarre interests, one being creepypastas and the inclusion of Slender Man.
Anissa and Morgan met on the school bus, and they started finding more and more they had in common. Both of the girls had been bullied in school. Anissa and Morgan were similar because they both had a love for the dark side. They enjoyed tales of horror and fantasy. The scarier the better.
While Morgan used her imagination to escape her bullies, Anissa used the internet to escape for her reality. Anissa said in the recorded interrogation that she first heard of Slender Man while watching a Skyda's Minecraft mod showcase. Skyda's Minecraft, or Adam Dauberg, was a Minecraft YouTuber who would play video games with his friends, as well as present mods for the game. Now, outside of the whole discovery of the internet thing, Anissa and Morgan would continue to talk about things that they enjoyed, like their love of animals, geeky TV shows, and of course, Anissa's newfound discovery of the Creepypasta Wiki. Anissa would eventually introduce Morgan into the Creepypasta Wiki on December of 2013. Both girls were completely invested in the Creepypasta world, eventually the Slender Man lore. They were so obsessed, it was to the point where the girls started theorizing and eventually believing that the cryptid could have been real. The girls didn't only believe that the Slender Man was real, they believed the Slender Man wanted them to become his proxies and to kill for him, as well as to move into Slender Manor. Yes, Slender Manor, that anime boy creepypasta mansion that was created back on DeviantArt. After 2 months of being friends, Anissa and Morgan would make the decision that they were going to sacrifice someone in the name of Slender Man, with them choosing their victim and friend, Peyton. In order for Peyton to be lured into the woods, Morgan and Anissa would have to build trust with her again. So, since Morgan already knew who Peyton was, all she had to do was approach. Now, to Peyton, this was a surprise. Morgan often never really talked to her. Morgan seemed to have this unexpected interest in reuniting their old friendship. Peyton sensed something was wrong, but she was happy to have her old friend back, eventually being introduced to Anissa later on. This was when Morgan started to email Peyton a bunch of creepypasta stories to try and get her invested into the creepypasta lore and stories, like how her and Anissa were. While Peyton was creeped out and scared of these stories, she still read some of them, just to keep the friendship with Morgan and Anissa. Little did she know, they were only plotting against her. Around this time, Morgan began to do research on Slender Man lore, making sure that the murder with the fictional cryptid standards. She also did research on murder and true crime cases, with her search history containing the such as how to cover up a murder, and what happens if I get caught murdering someone. Yeah, they weren't really that smart. As the case continues, it would seem pretty obvious that Morgan was more engaged and serious when it came to the murder, while it seemed that Anissa was just following Morgan's lead. In fact, there's evidence that can prove that Anissa didn't even want to commit the crime. She even revealed Morgan and her's plan to another friend of hers, that she was going to kill someone to become a proxy to Slender Man. Though you could argue that Anissa was just being sloppy and it accidentally slipped, or she was too excited and just had to tell someone. Anyways, Morgan's proxy plan would eventually be put into full effect on May 30th, 2014. On May 30th, 2014, Morgan would be celebrating her birthday with Anissa and Peyton at the Walkinshaw Skateland. While Peyton was skating on her own, Morgan and Anissa were finalizing their plan, and they agreed that instead of killing her under the covers as she sleeps.
So originally I thought it was, we go to bed around 8, Morgan sets an alarm on her Kindle to like 2 a.m. and puts big headphones on, and then the alarm wakes her up, she wakes me up, and then we kill Bella, put her under some covers, make it look like she was sleeping, and then we run.
They changed it to tomorrow morning, when they'll lure Peyton out into the woods and stab her. Before the girls left, Morgan's parents agreed to let Anissa and Peyton have a sleepover. While Morgan and Anissa started to talk about creepypastas, Peyton wouldn't really be too interested and eventually went to sleep early. The two girls, after Peyton fell asleep, would then talk about their plan one last time before enacting on it first thing in the morning. After a relatively uneventful night for Peyton, the girls will talk about going to David's Park to play hide and seek. David's Park is a national park located in Wisconsin, by the way. Now, usually Morgan wasn't allowed to go onto long distances on her own, without an adult present at least. But for this one occasion, since it was Morgan's birthday, her mom allowed her and her friends to go to the park. Which to me in hindsight, is kind of insane on how their plan would have fallen apart if their mom just said no. While Peyton packed snacks and water, Morgan and Anissa would pack extra clothes, illustrations and writings of Slender Man, pictures of each other's family, and a 13cm kitchen knife. As the trio made it into the park, they found a restroom to try and lure Peyton into. Peyton reluctantly went inside. When Morgan and Anissa began to talk more about Slender Man lore, Peyton almost immediately sensed something unnerving, or a sense of danger. As she felt this unsettling vibe, she would leave the restroom. Morgan and Anissa would then argue on who should kill Peyton, with Anissa handing the knife to Morgan and telling her to go ballistic and wild. The group would then enter the woods to play hide and seek. While Morgan began to count down, Anissa told Peyton to lie down and cover herself with leaves and sticks. Once Peyton does, Anissa then orders Morgan to stab Peyton. While Anissa pinned down Peyton, Morgan would proceed to stab her in the arm, legs, and torso a total of 19 times. 2 of the wounds hit major organs, as well as one of them missing a major artery in the heart by less than a millimeter, with another going through her diaphragm, cutting into her stomach. The girls told Peyton to lie down so she can bleed slower, and they'll go get help. While in reality, Morgan said, "We aren't getting help. We want her to die." And so they left her in the woods to bleed out. Peyton would eventually crawl into a patch of grass to lay more comfortably, which in her luck, a cyclist named Greg Steinberg, who would take a different closed route and find Peyton laying on the grass. He immediately called the police, saving Peyton's life.
911. What's the address of your emergency?
Waukesha County, Lincoln. I'm transferring over a caller on Big Bend at the dead end just south of Rivera.
Okay.
He's calling from came upon a 12-year-old female. She appears to be stabbed.
She appears to be what?
Stabbed.
Stabbed?
Correct.
Okay.
Sir, are you still there?
Yes.
Hi, sir. So are you with this 12-year-old female?
Yes, she says she's having trouble breathing. She said she was stabbed multiple times.
Stabbed multiple times?
Yeah.
Okay, sir, are you with her right now?
Yes.
Is she awake?
She's awake.
Is she breathing?
Yeah, she's breathing. She said she can take shallow breaths. She's alert.
Okay, stay with her. We're sending the police department. Don't hang up, okay?
Okay.
Hold on just a minute. Don't hang up.
Okay.
Okay. Hold on just a minute, sir. We're sending officers. Okay. Is there any assailant around?
I didn't even look. I don't see anybody.
It's a dead end. Okay, stay right with her, sir. Is she on the ground or is she standing up?
No, she's laying on the grass.
Laying on the grass. Stay right with her. Just let me know if she is remaining conscious or not, okay?
Okay.
Is there any bleeding going on?
Her clothing has got blood on it.
Where are the wounds? Do you see where the wounds are?
No, I don't know if I should be rolling her over and checking or not. Do you know where?
Okay, just stay with her and just let me know if she's conscious or alert or stops breathing or anything. Hold on, I'm going to talk to the ambulance. Police are also en route.
Okay, thank you. Somebody's coming. Sun bothering you at all? My shade? Okay. You're very
Okay. Just keep her in that position. Just let me know on her breathing.
Okay. Her eyes are still
What's your name, sir?
My name?
Your name?
My name, Greg.
Greg. Okay, were you just passing through?
Yes.
Okay, and you found her and she was just laying there?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so you see any active bleeding or blood spurting out or anything like that?
No, unless it's underneath her. I just see just dried blood.
Okay, just dried blood. Okay. Okay, is she still breathing? Is she still alert?
Yeah.
Okay, stay with her.
Yep.
Stay with her. Keep an eye on her. Hold on just a minute. Do not hang up, sir.
Okay, I will not. Who did that to you? Or don't you want to talk? Okay, well, if it's better not to talk, then don't talk with your energy.
And she didn't say who did this or how it happened?
I don't know if she wants to be talking. I started to ask her, and then...
That's okay. If she's
got to save her energy, I think.
Okay, but you see nobody else around you. Are you clearly visible when they pull down that road towards the dead end that they'll see you?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Are you clearly visible when they come down there so they see you?
I got a strobe flashlight on my bicycle. I'll shine that towards any emergency vehicle I see. And I'll be standing in the middle of the road.
You're in the middle of the road? And where's she, in the side of the road?
Yeah, she's on the grass. It's a little trail I take on my bicycle.
Okay, see. Don't hang up, sir. Just stay right with me.
Okay. There's a squad car coming now.
Okay, the squad car coming? Okay, flag the squad car down, protect her.
There he's coming.
Does she have a bike or anything with her?
No, I don't see it. One sandal is off. But, maybe 3 feet away from her.
Okay, flag that officer down. I'm going to let you go. Okay, you meet with him right now, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Peyton was later taken to the hospital, while police officers waited for the arrival of Detective Michelle Trucioni. As ER doctors and nurses examined the wounds of Peyton, they noticed that her blood pressure was extremely high, and if it got any higher, she could be at risk for experiencing a heart attack. Doctors also noticed that she had around 19 stab wounds, as well as the particular chest wound that would have killed her. While the nurses were stitching Peyton's wounds together, Detective Truosi entered the room and began to question Peyton into finding out who stabbed her. This is where Peyton would confess that Morgan stabbed her. With confirmation, the police officers drove out to Morgan Geyser's house to interview her parents. They found out that they had a sleepover just the day before with another girl, Anissa Wire. With a new suspect in hand, they contacted her father, as to for the whereabouts of his daughter. In a matter of hours, both girls were now being searched for, which led to a full-on investigation. Anything was on the table for evidence, such as childhood photos, videos, drawings, notes, anything was on the table. This was when Christy Wire found her daughter's phone with a goodbye note written on the Notes app, which was created on May 28th, 2014, 4 days before the stabbing. The note stated, "This is my final wish to those who care. Do not grieve my absence, but remember me for who I was. I love and cherish you all, and wouldn't do you harm." At 2:53 p.m., the Wisconsin Sheriff's Police Department got a call that two girls were spotted on 94, sitting on the side of the freeway, who were presumably around the right age. The 94 freeway was around 5 hours away from the stabbing location. Morgan and Anissa were eventually captured and questioned, still as suspects. They would later confess and plead guilty to the crime. Morgan would confess to first-degree intentional homicide and was sentenced to 40 years in a mental institute, while Anissa would confess to attempted second-degree intentional homicide and was also sentenced to 25 years in a mental facility. The full story would be seen as a mystery, but 9 years later, that mystery would eventually be solved, but much more on that later.
A 14-year-old girl will be charged as an adult for trying to kill her mother and her brother.
It's an online creation popular with kids, but parents, beware of what your children are watching.
Party on Embassy Boulevard is selling what they call a Slender Man morph suit.
We found things that she had written, and she made reference to Slender Man.
Told she was influenced by violent online stories like Slender Man.
Which is somewhere in the UK. And it's gotten so out of hand that an X-Files investigator has taken a look into it.
Things like murder, how to kill someone, guns, knives.
Possibilities, and neither your best interests nor anyone else's.
It's not just photos, guys. People are also reporting that they have been harassed by this creature.
Children, the impression that this is cool and this is okay.
Sadly, this isn't the only time the US would face a Slender Man related attack, cause on June 6, 2014, 6 days after the Slender Man stabbing, a 13-year-old girl would attack her own mother with a knife in the Hamilton County, which is 6 hours away from Waukesha. The 13-year-old had her hood up with her sleeves covering her hands, while wearing a plain white mask. Her mother claims that she was absolutely obsessed with the Slender cryptid. Before the daughter was able to kill her, she was relocated into the Hamilton County Juvenile Detention Center. With drawings of demons, insanity, and apparently the feeling of despair and darkness, as well as her writings and letters about the Slender Man, which included murder. Her mother also said that she had a Minecraft world dedicated to Slender Man. Luckily, her mother will only face minor injuries, which included cuts on her face, back, and neck. And believe it or not, there's another Slender Man incident occurring on September 5th, 2014 in Port Richey, Florida, with a 14-year-old girl named Lily Marie Hartwell soaking her bedsheets and towel in rum and bleach. She then carried the soaked towel and bedsheets into her garage, lit a match, and set the house to blaze. As the flames spread, she would escape to a nearby park and sleep in the restroom. Luckily, her mother and 9-year-old brother were able to escape from the flames, with little to no wounds, even with the mother returning back into the Inferno house to search for her daughter, yet to no success, as well as the house being absolutely destroyed. Once the flames became tame, police officers would investigate what left of the house to find an e-copy of Soul Eater and multiple stories about the cryptid Slender Man. Police officer Eddie Daniels even stated in an ABC News article, she had visited the website that contains a lot of Slender Man information and stories, as well as stating later on, it would be safe to say that there's a connection to that. Lily would eventually text her mother an apology, which stated, "Mom, I am so sorry. I don't know why I did it." Which was then followed by, "Did any of you get hurt?" Later on, she would be found with a book bag containing cookies, water, knives, lighters, flashlights, and a notebook containing notes about killing and the safety of her house. She was charged with attempted murder and was also diagnosed with schizophrenia. Now, pause. I remember this being a big deal because I live in Florida. I even remember when parents were going after Party City because they held Slender Man costumes. It was an insane time. One of her friends was interviewed about the incident, but she confirmed herself that she was mostly lying her ass off during the interview. And that's not even the worst part. The worst part is that I'm not even finished. This is the tip of the iceberg. There is a total of 5, well, technically 6 if you include sightings, one occurring on June 9th, 3 days after the Hamilton County case, ending in the suicide and death of 2 to 5 police officers. England was facing Slender Man sightings in Cannock Chase during the night of September of 2015. And the other was taking place on February 21st, 2019, being the one of the only Slender Man cases that ended in tragedy, with the rape and murder of Anisha McFall, who was only 6 years old at the time. I'm not going to go into heavy detail on those, as I wanted to cover those cases in a future video about the real-world crimes that are linked with creepypastas, like the Laughing Jack case and the Jeff the Killer fan. So, I'll leave an article explaining those situations in the description, as well as videos that I think are suitable to those. After these attacks, the internet, Slender Man fans, and the creepypasta world would be in the public spotlight for all the wrong reasons, with news sites and reporters watching on whatever they'll do next. On June 4th, 2014, a Something Awful forums editor, Jack Parson, would make a response to the stabbing in an article called "Please do not kill anybody because of the Slender Man, just like the Something Awful we knew." The post came in a slight tone of annoyance, with the first paragraph stating, "This incident has been described as tragic and the perpetrators described as insane, or deeply troubled. I don't want to make light of mental health issues, but it would seem to me that a more accurate diagnosis would be that these two 12-year-old girls are dumb as hell." The Waukesha School District, after realizing that they're also in the public eye, banned the Creepypasta wiki from being accessed on all school-graded computers, which caused a sort of echo to other schools, because I remember the day the Creepypasta wiki was banned from my school, and I'm like all the way in Florida. I was fucking devastated. Anyways, back to the video. Eric Cunson returned to make an official statement the following Tuesday, around the same time that Something Awful article was released on June 4th. It stated, "I am deeply saddened by the tragedy in Wisconsin, and my heart goes out to the families of those affected by this terrible act." An administrator of the Creepypasta wiki named Slosh Train stated, "Hey there. Again, post-editing the Xpadition, you're going to be seeing a lot of me. So I wanted to make things clear and say that the article that the little piece that I'm reading, the response that the Creepypasta wiki made, the one that Slosh Train made, it's deleted. And I'm currently reading a snippet of it off of not only the Wikipedia page that the Slender Man stabbing has, but also the Kotaku article. Kotaku article that also covers a statement, and a lot of other fucking pages and news sites cover it as well. So if I don't have the official thing, I just got from the article, and that's about it. Also, I wanted to say that the Creepypasta wiki also made not the wiki, but the official website also made a statement about it that I completely missed. I don't know how, I just completely missed an article about it, in which is basically the same thing. They just say that Slender Man is not real. Anyways, that's it. Back to the video. The stabbing was an isolated incident that did not accurately represent the Creepypasta community. We also stated that the Creepypasta wiki was a literary website and does not condone murder or satanic rituals. While Joe Jazowaski, and other administrators, including the help of narrators, writers, and artists of the Creepypasta fandom, will hold a 24-hour stream to raise money to help Peyton, titled Narrators United.
The word that we're trying to get out is that we are a creative community. Just because we're fans of horror stories and ghost stories and paranormal, just because we're fans of horror stories does not make us horrible people.
I want to share with you what this community is really about. We are not hateful. We don't follow some weird cult. We're normal people who love to read scary stories when the campfire is stomped out. What those girls did is horrible, but I can assure you no one will be writing about it. No one will be mocking it. We only feel sadness, and we only feel compassion for those involved.
Yet, no matter what they did, their reputation was forever tarnished by the stabbings. Around the time in 2014 to 2015, this was the first time murders like this happened. 2014 to 2015 was sort of the rise of the murdering in the name of creepypasta characters, like I said with the Laughing Jack murder and the Jeff the Killer one, which also happened around this time. The stabbing not only gave the mainstream their first taste of Slender Man / the Slenderverse, but also their first introduction to the creepypasta world. Believe it or not, this stabbing kickstarted the question of if creepypastas, or the internet as a whole, was safe for children, with news sites mainly questioning the topic. This incident obviously had documentaries made about it, but it also had movies that were inspired by the incident, like Terror in the Woods, Mercy Black, and, well, the official movie in 2018. Before the movie was released, there were two that were pretty popular. Bad, even terrible, but popular. The first one I'll talk about is Slender Man 2016 and Always Watching in 2015, which was created by the Marble Hornets crew. While Slender 2016 was arguably terrible by both audiences, Always Watching, even though the movie isn't good for general audiences, but for the fans of Slender, it was pretty good. Not the best, but definitely a decent Slender Man movie. Hey there, post-editing Xpadition. And I just wanted to clarify that when I mean general audiences, I meant target audiences. The target audience was Marble Hornets fans, and the film didn't do anything Marble Hornets related, other than include the operator logo and a reference to Alex. That's about it. But the main reason why I wanted to clarify this is because I watched the movie when I was a Slender Man fan, and I enjoyed it, and recently I watched it again because I was actually trying to get informed with Marble Hornets, and the film is such doodoo buns when it comes to a comparison with Marble Hornets that the only way that it can be passed off as decent is if you remove the whole Marble Hornets topic and just categorize it as a Slender Man film. Because as a standalone Slender Man film, it's pretty good. I would say it's a decent movie, not the best, not the worst. Very boring. When you see it as a standalone film rather than a continuation of this world, it's a decent movie. Marble Hornets fans didn't like it. Slender Man fans did like it. There's a big distinction between Slender Man and Marble Hornets fans. Back to the video. But in May of 2016, 2 years after the Slender Man stabbing, news outlets were told by Sony Pictures that a Slender Man movie would be in the making, with Eric Cunninson and David Breik, writer of Ellie 2015, would be writing the movie. To the average creepypasta and Slender Man fan, people were excited. A movie with the original creator working on it, with the help of a major company like Sony? How could this have gone wrong? Well, a whole string of things, which almost ended in a lawsuit. Let me explain a bit more. On January 4th, 2017, the movie moved from rumors to an official announcement, as well as the director of the film being announced to be Salvian White, director of I'll Always Know What You Did Last Summer, with an approximate release date of May 2018. On May 23rd, 2017, the main cast and release date were revealed, and on January 2nd, 2018, the official poster was revealed, and on the next day, the 3rd, the official teaser was released. It wasn't really received well, but this was only the teaser. It's supposed to feel ambiguous. It's supposed to draw us in to make us want to see what happens next. On January 23rd, 2018, the movie would be delayed and moved to August 24th, 2018. Now, hindsight's 2020, and we have all the information to see why this movie was delayed, so let's see it. One of the reasons for the movie's delay was due to the outrage of parents and the press, pressing them, stating that the movie was inappropriate for a terrible event that occurred 4 years prior, as well as Bill Wire, father of Anissa, stating, "It's absurd they want to make a movie like this. It's popularizing a tragedy is what it's doing. I'm not surprised, but in my opinion, it's extremely distasteful. All we're doing is seeing the pain of all three of these families have gone through." During this time, Sony also decided to announce another reason for the movie's delay. Sony reported to news sites that the reason for the movie's delay was because of Slender Man's competitors. If the Slender Man movie was released on time, it would have to go against another movie, and looking at the movie, it would have absolutely destroyed Slender Man. The film that Slender Man would have had to compete with if it was released on time was Deadpool 2. And the worst part is that this is only the tip of the iceberg, because on May 31st, 2018, this was the beginning of the producers versus the Slender Man. The movie was almost finished, and the producers were happy on how the film turned out, saying that the movie needed a bigger budget, but not to put into film time or special effects, but to be put on more screens and more marketing commercials. While on the other hand, Sony themselves seen that the movie was the worst they ever made, which was reported on the Horror News Network. Sony sees this movie as a low-budget Blumhouse-style release. According to two insiders, while the producers, a group of individuals that include William Shattuck and James Vanderbilt, had more confidence in the movie. The disagreement was so bad, the movie was almost at risk of being a straight-to-streaming movie, to be premiered on Amazon or Netflix, rather than playing exclusively in theaters, which, to be honest, they probably should have done. This was the point when Sony realized that they went too far, realizing that they messed up by choosing a character that has been seen as a mystery for most of its life, as well as having 5, damn near 6 murder cases connected to it. So, as a last-ditch effort, Sony would try to ship the movie. The term ship in the movie industry is simple. To ship a movie is to basically sell the movie, or to give the publishing or distribution rights to a different studio. For example, the Sonic movie. Universal, the original studio working on the movie, gave the rights to Sony, which then eventually gave the rights to Paramount. This is another point when Sony realized that they messed up again. Since the movie was completed, teasers and trailers were released, and posters were already made, the movie was practically impossible to sell, since the company who buys it would have to pay Sony the expenses it incurred. With the feeling of regret falling onto Sony, they swallowed their pride and released the second trailer, as well as announcing the movie would be released 2 weeks early. Once the second trailer dropped, the Slender Man fans began to tear it apart. Fans, critics, and even news journalists weren't happy on how the movie trailer came out. In fact, Sony would be caught slendy-handed a month prior to the movie's release. On July 30th, 2018, 11 days before the movie's release, Sony would find themselves in court after bullying a smaller studio over the copyright of Slender Man. So, as stated earlier in the video, Sony would purchase film and game rights to Slender Man. Now, what if I told you a smaller studio by the name of Fame Factory was working on a film titled Flay, which was going to be a movie distributed by Digitally? Which was? Before Sony sent multiple cease and desist letters to the studio, Sony claims they did this because of the main character of Flay, blatantly copying the mysterious meme Slender. But Fame Factory didn't plan on lying down and taking the hits. In fact, they decided to look for a declaratory judgment for the promotion, distribution, and advertisements of Flay that doesn't infringe on Sony's copyright laws and trademarks. Fame Factory even pressed Sony by stating that Sony's IP rights are indefinite, encompass free to use by all public domain property, or lack the requisite legal requirements to be protectable and enforceable. This was when Fame Factory hit Sony with a gotcha move. While Fame Factory's movie was inspired by Slender Man, the movie didn't go into the origin of Slender. During the trial, Fame Factory kept pressing Sony's representative, Linda Borrow, about which copyright elements they broke. She avoided specifying why. Due to lack of copyright infringement and evidence, Fame Factory was allowed to promote, distribute, and advertise Flay as much as they wanted. You can actually purchase the movie on Amazon for $11.99, and from what I saw, it's a pretty good movie for being an indie project. Now back to Slender 2018. Once the movie eventually released closer and closer to its date, the Slender Man critics were only going to become more controversial. It could be good. The movie's going to flop. The movie's going to ruin what Slender Man is. What Slender Man is? Who even is Slender? What is Slender Man? These questions will be prominent until the movie's eventual release.
There's nothing behind that except an excuse to throw in, like, literally, I think in total there were 5 straight minutes of B-roll footage throughout the movie, scattered. Yeah, it's like, oh, it's the trees, it's the clouds.
You know, but I'll tell you one thing. This movie is gonna be the stupidest shit alive.
This has to be one of the worst movies I've ever seen, and
why was this film made now, in 2018, and not 5 years ago when people might have actually cared?
They have been killed or lost their minds, but ironically, this movie killed Slender Man.
And it should surprise absolutely no one that the end product is a 90-minute piece of shit.
It feels like a mockbuster that you'd find in a bargain bin somewhere. No, this is something that you'd find on YouTube.
How long did it take you to come up with that pile of bullshit? If you see him, you can't unsee him.
Nothing about this movie works. Slender Man's not scary. Everything he does isn't scary. It's just not good. It's fucking poopy. It's shitty stink shit. I mean,
it's like they didn't shoot enough.
And if the events of 2014 had built the coffin that Slender Man would lie in, Sony's 2018 Slender Man movie would drive the final nail.
Oh my god, my son's a fucking genius. Did you just hear what he just said? How about we make the theme of this movie reverse John Cena?
Oh my god. Words can't describe just how shit this film is. It was, by all means, the final nail in the coffin for Slender's popularity.
That was really bad.
The movie was terrible. It's insane how the indie company that they sued somehow did a better job than Sony did, which is saying something because Flay, while in my opinion is a meh movie, was seen as relatively mediocre. Slender Man 2018 isn't well written, not even the virtual effects were good. The special effects, the editing, it was all so horrendous. Consider everything that was stated in chapters 1 to 3, and the way that the community, both young and old, stressed the importance of Slender Man to internet culture and as well as to artists as a whole. Who or what is Slender Man? In my personal opinion, reviewing how the community evolved and how they viewed the movie, Slender Man is a vessel. He's the embodiment of a blank canvas. This was said in chapter 1, allowing anyone to spray their imagination and creativity onto him. And that's also why I believe the movie failed. Slender was always meant to be interpreted by young authors, to make it theoretical, scary, and an interesting story. When you put something like that in a room full with business executives trying to make the character fit into a repetitive and boring Hollywood formula, the character and the story dies. The possibilities of a Slender Man movie are quite literally endless, and indie projects like Marble Hornets, hell, even Flay shown that. Slender Manor, Slender Elementary, Creepypastas, things like that are what made Slender, Slender. Discussion of what 2018 Slender Man should have been was formed around the time the movie came out, being mainly popular on Reddit, Something Awful, Twitter threads, and YouTube. With nearly a decade of multiple Slender Man stories and perspectives being done, what could have Sony Pictures do? The way I see it, there were 3 options. Adapt an already existing Slenderverse story, make a movie about everything known about Slender Man, or to offer a new perspective with a new story. Out of the 3, safe to say for a corporation, option 2, make a movie about everything known about Slender Man, was chosen by Sony Pictures, being the safest route for the room of businessmen who didn't even know what the fuck a Slender Man is. Now, in my opinion, option 3 is a better option. But even though it seems better in a fan's perspective, it's more risky in a professional perspective. It would have been more in line with what Slender Man was at the time, expanding the lore and coming up with something interesting and new, like what Marble Hornets did, the 8 Pages, The Arrival. Hell, even the anime boy webcomic Slender Manor did things differently, applying elements from the media that came before it, but building their world while doing so. I feel another way of saying it was already said 4 to 5 years ago by a YouTuber and Slender Man enthusiast,
Valeria Santiago.
Sony Pictures should have taken from almost 10 years of portrayals, 10 years of new perspectives, is to give a new perspective. They were given a canvas with which they could have told any story they liked, with a monster that could potentially thematically stand in for anything. The movie could have been about a ton of things, of children of abuse finding comfort in bad places, how wanting to learn more about something can be worse than just being ignorant about it, the importance of taking responsibility for unforgivable actions. And I'm saying these themes in particular because they are present in the film and are done nothing with. All of these ideas are either set up without payoffs or paid off without setups. So, you see, I'm not trying to rewrite the movie with anything specific or list what they should have done on a story level. I'm saying that in order to matter, the story had to do something and hire someone that had ideas for a story, a fresh take. All the best things about the Slender Man up until this point were in its fresh at the time takes.
what Slender Man needed was a purpose, a take, something that has a deeper meaning, or just a reason to be coming to existence. Though I'm a huge fan of Eric Cunnison, his art being a giant inspiration for me, but I don't think he was the best option to write the movie with. Though he is the creator of Slender Man, most of Slender's popular adaptations didn't really have a connection to him. Throughout the years on the internet, he really only establishes and built the basis for Slender Man's origin, as well as co-writing the story for Slender The Revival, but that was with the help from the Marvel Hornets crew. I think someone's at the house. It's like 1 a.m. I hope I'm not getting robbed. Like I said earlier, Slender Man is a vessel, and in almost all other Slender Man media, he plays the role of an entity, as something entirely different from the main casts, and that something is called a theming device. And to be surprised the movie actually tries to do this, keyword, tries, in the film, Slender Man is made to be seen as the internet's boogeyman, which, looking back on what ABC called them for their 2020 special, that wasn't really a good sign. So the main cast decided to fit the whole horror teenage girl stereotype and chose to summon him. Yeah, summon him, not like he's in the woods, he's always been real, like summon him. And of course, it turns out he's real. Maybe if this movie was released 13 years prior, it may have had a fighting chance, since Slender Man only really had Marble Hornets in the 8 pages, but it was released in 2018, when Slender Man already had a set criteria of expectations, and expectations were high. Fans obviously weren't happy, the general audience wasn't happy, and Slender was swept under the rug and slowly forgotten, until recently. Recently, in 2022 to 2023, there have been a total of 2 major Slender Man projects that have been announced and released, one of them being the remaster of Slender The Revival, while the other was a major book, bringing back life into the once cold Slender Man Waukesha stabbing. Now, even though what the girls did was wrong on so many levels, I'd like to inform that they were just kids. I'm not excusing what they did, the deed has already been done, the envelope has been sealed, but I'd like to introduce someone before getting back into the case, and that someone is Kathleen Hale. Kathleen Hale, or I'll just call Kathleen during the rest of this video, she is a true crime author that grew up in, believe it or not, Wisconsin, and currently lives in Los Angeles. She went to the unbelievably prestigious school of Harvard and graduated in 2010. After she graduated, she would proceed to become a journalist for Elle magazine and Vince magazine, as well as The Guardian, among others. By the way, this is all information I'm getting from her own website, so yeah. Recently, she now does on and off stories, as in covering crime for Vanity Fair, as well as working in the television scene, being a writer and producer on shows like Outer Banks, and apparently a Slender Man miniseries? I don't know, maybe IMDb just messed up. Now, although Kathleen was only 9 years late to the topic, her input did something that HBO, Law & Order, Criminal Minds, and even ABC didn't do, and that is to reveal the full story. The level of detail in this book is absolutely insane, using court transcripts, police reports, individual reports, and even getting exclusive interviews with Morgan and kind of Anissa. The book is pretty good. It brings an eye-opening experience to the case, as well as the American court system as a whole. As said before, in the case, Morgan and Anissa suffered from an undiagnosed mental illness, which in every single coverage of the case is usually kind of overlooked. Most of them covering the events of what happened that day, the interviews, and the trial/sentencing of Morgan and Anissa. Most of these documentaries wouldn't focus on the indoor life of the institute, which was where Morgan was denied of any antipsychotics, causing her to still see the Slender Man, or at least a vivid vision of him. It was said in recent research of the book that Morgan would be frequently laughing to herself, eventually laughing out loud as well as blabbering incoherent things, believing she was under the Volican mind control? What? Upon reading this, it also sheds light to how the US viewed mental illness, or at least a lack of acknowledgement or support given to the girls at the time. I mean, the year was 2014, let's be honest, mental health wasn't really being cared for. It was acknowledged, but dismissed, which was shown in not only the legal and court system, but also how the people close to Morgan and Anissa dismissed the idea, including the teachers and parents of them. And when adults, the people that children often look up to, both mentally and physically, deciding to avoid these signs or simply dismissing their problems, the child will eventually start to feel like they're crazy for thinking like that, or they'll eventually listen to their thoughts. The more you read this book, the more heartbreaking it gets. Once you remember that these were children, impressionable, mentally unstable children with unlimited and unmonitored access to the internet, showing how powerful the internet, the stories, and social media really are. And this was proven even more because of Morgan and Anissa's families. You see, around the time after the stabbing and after the trials, Morgan and Anissa's families would receive online hate mail and even death threats, both from the Slender Man and Creepypasta fans, and as well as their local communities. I do believe that when you do a little bit more thinking on the book, after you read it the first time, it's kind of one-sided. And in my opinion, the only way to get the full story is by combining all sides. The book mainly covers Morgan, while Anissa refused to talk, most likely wanting to move away from this, since she's now a free woman as of July 1st in 2021, as well as getting her GPS tracker removed as of September of 2023, while Morgan is still waiting for release. Another thing this book really does is undermine Peyton's role, being the literal victim. Kathleen describes Peyton as a good friend, as if she wasn't the victim in the whole case, as well as a lacking of the interview with Peyton, which, I mean, if I was stabbed 19 times and left for dead, I wouldn't want to talk about it either, causing her side of the story to have little to no recent information. In fact, she didn't even know the book was made, so, TLDR, I lied to you. This isn't the full story. It's like 33.33% of the story. Although the book does right by shedding light on the legal, court, and US health systems, as said earlier, with their views of mental illness and the treatment of someone experiencing psychosis, I think it was the wrong move to make it about Morgan of all people, the girl that stabbed her friend. And the way that this book was written was also kind of odd, as I feel Kathleen really tries to have the reader sympathize with Morgan. But where is Peyton now? We have news that Anissa is now a free woman, we have news that Morgan is still in prison, but what about Peyton? Well, as of November 2022, she has reported to be in college and is doing fine for herself, and that's all we could really ask for her to do.
Who or what is Slender Man?
In the depths of the internet's vast, tangled web, a monster lingers where shadows intertwine. A mysterious figure feared and admired, and a symbol of fear, yet a canvas of creation. A monster born from whispers, crafted in forms and memes, intriguing dark dreams to become inspiration. A horror icon with tentacles that tear our boundaries. In his presence, some find solace, others find dread. The artists and the dreamers drew inspiration from him, creating narratives that blend horror and curiosity. In their stories and films, he found his own voice, uniting the masses and sharing their shared fears. Yet the shadows still surround him. His darkness can breed, and birthed with the warning of the dangers they embraced. For his attention, some wandered astray. Fiction blurs with reality, turning their hearts away. With each story that circulates, balance is needed. The good and the ill, intertwined in the lessons we learn. Our reflection of fears that silently uncurl are reminders of humanity's complex ties. There lies the paradox, a blessing and curse, in the realms we create for better or worse, in the tapestry of existence with their fates closely curled. After all, it is a small world.